Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise to the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth, the Most High Power. This particular presentation, brothers and sisters, is presented and more than likely is going to be in the aspect of a two-part series due to the length of the amount of slides that we'll be going over. Okay, so how is everyone? Presentation. This book is available on Amazon.com. The book is also available by contacting me, 908-587-4841. The book is also available by PayPal at hkashub@yahoo.com. Now, if you buy it on Amazon, brothers and sisters, it's $25. If you buy it directly through me, through PayPal, it's $20. All right. The brother who did the cover, as you see there, is a brother named Chief Naftali Ben Dan. All right? So, brothers and sisters, giving honor and praise to the Creator of heaven and earth. Without any further ado, let us go in. This one is called Hebrews, Hyksos and Meso-Americans, a short matter. Shalom. Dating. It became the practice from the very beginning of the dynasty for the ruling king to accept as a co-regent for the last years of his reign, his eldest son and intended successor. Now, brothers and sisters, what we have just read, all right, we want to take the pen and circle what we just read right here. This right here is speaking in regards to ancient Egypt and what they call Dynasty 12. Now, the reason why we want to get into this, brothers and sisters, is because recently you will still find people trying to bring the Egyptian chronology against Israelites without understanding the Egyptian chronology itself. See, the point we wanted to emphasize right here, it says the dynasty of the ruling king to accept as a co-regent for the last years of his reign. So, brothers and sisters, when you find in Dynasty 12 that you have certain kings that were ruling together at the same time, this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. The list that you see of Manetho and everything of that sort is not 100% accurate. The list that you see within the Saqqara, the list that you see in the Ramesseum list, the list that you see in the Abydos record is not all 100% because there are certain kings that's missing if they didn't like the king, and they didn't distinguish when certain kings ruled together as a co-regency. So they have it to where one king is listed over another king, was listed over another king. And most people think that co-regencies may have not existed, so they pushing the date further and further back. All right. Then try to take Egypt as the way to say the timeline of the world must be. So therefore, they figure every other timeline in the world must be off. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. The standard chronology for the 12th dynasty has been remodeled over the years in the light of intensive studies and dated monumental records. Now, when we see right here, dated monumental records, brothers and sisters, these monumental records that were dated by people obviously much later on in time after such, unless you're dealing with the aspect that we're going to be talking about for edification purposes. The point in going over this, brothers and sisters, when it says what? The standard chronology for the 12th dynasty has been remodeled over the years. Now, for those who are familiar, brothers and sisters, with this book right here, this speaks into the aspect of the 12th dynasty of Egypt. So if we can begin to see that the timeline has been remodeled when you go into the aspect of Amenemhat, when you go into the aspect of Senusret, when you go into the aspect of the later on rulers such as Sobek Nefru and everything of that sort, you could begin to see what that's talking about for edification purposes. Next slide. Explanation of slide. The previous slide becomes of importance since the dating is what is presented to Israelites regarding the timeline of ancient Egypt. The fact that the co-regencies means that when we look at the Manetho and Saqqara and the Abydos list, we are seeing the rulers in successive order without regard to the co-regencies of each, as was stated. Next slide. Dating part 2. The AD counting was introduced actually in 525 AD by a guy named Dionysius Exegus. Now, brothers and sisters, we want to point this out for edification purposes once it comes down to the dating system that we're seeing today. In ancient dating, many today deal with the regnal dating timing. Now, in ancient dating, now we want to understand why this becomes important. Because when they're trying to sit there and pinpoint a BCE date to something of ancient times, when the people they're talking about did not have a BCE calendar, brothers and sisters, a lot of times that is what you call this right here, a hypothesis or an educated guess. That is why when they had debates and they were debating dates, it right there doesn't make any kind of sense, because the people that you're talking about in those times, brothers and sisters, did not deal with the same dating BCE that we see done today. Regnal dating. Regnal year is a year of the reign of a sovereign, from the Latin regna, meaning kingdom or rule. The oldest dating systems were in regnal years and considered the date as an ordinal, not as a cardinal number. Now, what are we pointing out, brothers and sisters? We want to emphasize what? The earliest dating systems were in regnal years. Now, why does that become very, very important, brothers and sisters, is because of this. If the ancient dating system was done in the aspect of when a king was ruling, how is it when Israelites are confronted by people, say the Kemetic, just throwing that out there, when they say, oh, you are saying that the Bible is a history book, but it doesn't have any dates. But yet at the same token, when you look at the record from Akkad or Akkadian, the record from Sumer or Sumerian, the record from Egypt or Kemet, they don't have any dates either. They do not have any dates on that. They say in the year of such and such king, in the days of such and such king, in the days of such and such ruler. So that is why they call it regnal dating. You understand? So the months of July and August were added in 44 BCE and 8 BCE. Now, let's understand something. July and August was inserted into the calendar that we have today. So when you look at December, brothers and sisters, DEC, all right, means 10. Like decade is 10 years. Like decimal is the 10th of something. So, brothers and sisters, this is something we want to point out. So, October, like octagon, means 8 sides. Octopus has 8 arms. But yet, because of the insertion of July and August, what was known as October, which was the 8th month, became known as the 10th month. All right, next slide. Explanation. The previous slide becomes of importance since many say the Bible is not a history book because there are no said dates in it. Yet, when we see what is regnal dating, we see that it was the earliest dating systems used. And so, brothers and sisters, one of the brothers in the chat stated that he stopped debating some years ago. Understood and respectful. What I've come to understand is that they who love to debate, and I mean those who just sit there and create rooms for such and everything, They don't study. You know where I got that information about the regnal dating? I first heard it years ago. And then I looked up regnal dating after I read a book called Pharaohs and Kings. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Then I looked it up online. It was just that simple. But when people want to present, say something such as a meme, saying, well, yeah, the Bible has no dates. So how can you say that is our history book? It's the same way when you're going to go into the papyrus of such and there's no date on that, but you say that's us anyway. Same premise. Because as pointed out, the ancient nations had what they call a regnal dating. That's why in the Bible, for instance, it says, and it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, and it came to pass in the days of Jotam, and it came to pass in the days of Jehoiakaz. Those were rulers, those were kings. You understand? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? Let's go in, if you will, to the next slide. 2 Kings chapter 24 and Jeremiah chapter 46. And the king of Egypt came not again any more out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the brook of Egypt unto the river Euphrates all that pertained to the king of Egypt. Now, brothers and sisters, we want to sit there and talk about certain things. King of Babylon had taken. The king of Babylon, brothers and sisters, was Nebuchadnezzar. All right? The king of Egypt, brothers and sisters, was Necho. All right? So this is something we want to point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. All right? Let's go on, if we will, to the part right here. The word of the Lord which came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the nations of Egypt, concerning the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Karkemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So as we just read right there, in the 4th year of such and such king. That's regnal dating. Now we want to point certain things out, brothers and sisters, as we have just spoke of in the Bible. Let's look at this right here, brothers and sisters. River Euphrates, Karkemish, Nebuchadnezzar, Necho, king of Egypt, Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah. That's from the Bible in Jeremiah 46. All right? So let's go on, if we will, to the next part. The Karkemish matter. See what we see right here? Karkemish, Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, Jerusalem, Pharaoh Necho. Now, there's something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes in that particular aspect, if we will, right? Let's look and see. Karkemish we just read of in the Bible in Jeremiah 46, right? Now, Jerusalem is the city where the king of Judah was. Necho is the Pharaoh Necho Wehembre of Dynasty 26 of ancient Egypt. So this is something we want to sit there and talk about for edification purposes. All right? Are there any questions concerning the part that we just talked about? The Bible identifies the land that it's speaking of. And as you can see, going from Egypt all through where the land of Israel was into Karkemish, because the king of Babylon was coming up, and they, along brothers and sisters with the Medes and the Scythians, wound up defeating the people that would have normally been here, noted as the Assyrians. All right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right, let's go on, if you will, to the next part. Karkemish and Nebuchadnezzar. He says the following: I crossed the river to go against the Egyptian army, which lay in Karkemish. They fought with each other, and the Egyptian army withdrew before him. He accomplished their defeat and beat them to non existence. As for the rest of the Egyptian army, which had escaped from the defeat so quickly that no weapon had reached them, in the district of Hamath, the Babylonian troops overtook and defeated them, so that not a single man escaped to his own country. Now, this right here is from a record that is understood to have been from Nebuchadnezzar himself, speaking about his defeat of the Egyptians. Now, why does this become important in this particular intro, brothers and sisters? Because as the Bible talks about in Jeremiah 46, about the aspect of Karkemish, so did Nebuchadnezzar speak about it. And we read about the name Nebuchadnezzar in Jeremiah. We showed the lands and the maps of what's being spoken of. Brothers and sisters, what was going on politically is that Assyria was falling. Egypt tried to go and help Assyria, but the Babylonians, accompanied with the Medes, brothers and sisters, defeated the Assyrians. All right? Now, I like to sit there and use the saying, that's something you can take to the bank. In other words, that's something you can sit there and bring up to a quote unquote secular historian for edification purposes. Next slide, please. Sorry about that. Nebuchadnezzar, Necho, Josiah, and Ashur-Balit II. Now, these are the kings that were ruling in this particular era and time. You had Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. You have Necho II of Egypt. You had Josiah, king of Judah, and Ashur-Balit II of Assyria. Brothers and sisters, you can look all this up in history for edification purposes. Any questions? Let's go on, if you will, to the next part. The New Age movement, Kemet. How does this become important, brothers and sisters, in what we're talking about? Brothers and sisters, one of the things that I contend is that the said conscious community is the black version of the New Age movement that the white man talks about. Now, as been asked before, and as been discussed before, it is said that geographically and through platonic plates and so forth and so on, the majority, including the land of Israel, of what they call the Middle East, belongs to continental Africa. So if the land of Israel belongs to continental Africa, then I've been asking for a while, why do they say that we are wrong when we say, okay, if you want to say we African, but this is our land in that continent? Why are they in the said conscious community okay with giving up part of what they already saying is Africa to the European? That's a question I ask. You know why? It's simply because the brothers and sisters, they're in cahoots. That's why. Oh, yeah, you can have that part. Now, let's look at this right here. You have the eye and then the pyramid, and these things are done in sequence of 13. 13 layers to the pyramid. And then you have what they call Inuit Coetus, which, as we discussed before, is the Latin phrase meaning our project is crowned with success. Then under the words of the pyramid is Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the world, or the new world order of the secular order. Then, if it would be clearer, the Roman numerals on the base of the pyramid equals 1776. 1776 is the same year that the Illuminati, brothers and sisters, was quote unquote introduced to the Americans, if we will. So these right there and these symbolisms, brothers and sisters, is something that we want to sit there and heavily pay close attention to, because we have to ask ourselves, who is it that is not being addressed? Who is deliberately being skipped over when they go over these PowerPoints, when they go over these presentations, when they sit there and try to make things against the house of Israel, and so forth and so on. All right? The United States of America. Brothers and sisters, did you know that the United States is not a country? The United States, brothers and sisters, is not a country, it's a company. According to international maritime law, every company has to have a president, a vice president, and a board of directors. Do you realize that majority of the people in the Western Hemisphere descended from somewhere else in the East, be it in Europe or be it in Africa or other places? A lot of those places have or had royalty. Like Jordan in the land of the East still has a king. England still has a queen. But did you ever wonder why that the descendants of the pilgrims can never sit there and say that they are king of America? It's because America is not a country. That's why. It's a corporation. And as stated in international maritime law, you have it to where what? You got to have a president, a vice president, and the Congress, brothers and sisters, serves as a board of directors. So let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. New Age movement / Kemet. On a subconscious level, the allure of pharaonic civilization has proved irresistible to the Romans and the successes in the West. Individuals and popular movements too have appropriated pharaonic ideas in pursuit of the particular cause. Akhenaten has been co-opted as a role model by Freudian psychoanalysts, fascists, Afrocentrists, New Age spiritualists, and gay rights campaigners. Akhenaten, which was a pharaoh, brothers and sisters, during the era of Dynasty 18, has been taken according to this here to be a symbol for gay rights campaigners, New Age spiritualists, Afrocentrists. This is the point I'm trying to make, brothers and sisters, when we talk about this particular subject, that the Afrocentrists and the New Age spiritualists, one is black, the other is white, but they all have a same agenda. In colleges, they focus on teaching about Egypt through the eyes and the aspect of Akhenaten. There is a reason why UCLA in California does that. There is a reason why NYU, New York University in New York City, does that. All right, so we can gain understanding of what we're talking about for edification purposes. All right, let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. Let us explain what we're talking about right here. Remember that part we just went over here about gay rights campaigners? Now look at this right here so we can sit there and get into this, brothers and sisters. Lifting the spiritual self-esteem of the LGBT community. This is a book that is online. Did you know that? A dude that's into the Kemetic stuff by the name of Kefra Kare Amente Anu wrote a book about women who want to sleep with women, men who want to sit there and sleep with men and women who want to sleep with the same gender, and people who are born a boy but want to be a girl, and born a girl who want to be a boy. Do you see what this is right here? So, brothers and sisters, when we start talking about this kind of subject as Israel, we're not just saying these things off the top of our head. You can get this book on Amazon. Did you know that? Lifting the spiritual self-esteem of the women who sit there and lick on women, men, who suck on men, bisexuals who want to sit there and be with one and the other, and people who are transgenders who want to sit there and deceive somebody about their natural birth, gender. I want people to peep what we're talking about. So we'll go back, if we will, to the other aspect here. All right. Akhenaten, who was a pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Let's go back to this right here, the New Age movement in Kemet. See how it all coincides and all are buddies. That's why they can't deal with the house of Israel. Then we go, okay, that's that part. I was getting into this right here. The New Age movement with the Kemet thing and how they have taken that whole Egyptian thing and made it part of their gay rights campaigners. And if that wasn't enough, as we see here, there is a book that is presently on Amazon that one can get about how a Kemetic brother or a Kemetic, I don't know who in the world that was, a Kemetic male promoting the whole thing of ancient Egypt, spirituality, and about how a man can sit there and do fellatio, how a woman can do cunnilingus. Do you see what we're talking about in this particular regard? So when brothers such as myself came up with a so-called theory that the Kemetic community and the so-called conscious community and the aspect of the white man talking about the New Age movement is all in one, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Let's go on to the next part. The book was written in response to what some religions say regarding the acts known as homosexuality, bisexuality, and transgender. We should be able to see that one from the Kemetic community, not the Hebrew community, took out the time to write in favor of homosexuality and the lifting of the self-esteem of the deceptive transgender people. Let's go. Here's the preface to that foolish book. The first reason, speaking of that person self, not me, when I say I, the first reason I made the decision to write, lifting the spiritual self-esteem of the LGBT community, a critique of fabricated, discriminatory, judgmental, and sexist world religions, is to provide support and information to any lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender individual who has serious concerns about any world religion that claims to be the word of some God or a chosen spiritual one. Secondly, the LGBT community should counter and then ignore the ridiculous religious claims that the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender lifestyle is in violation of the word of God and is somehow unnatural and abhorrent. Aberrant, sorry. Are we serious? That's from the premise and the preface of the book that we was just showing right here. Lifting the spiritual self-esteem of the women who like women, men who like men, bisexuals who like both genders, and transgenders who want to deceive people about who they were at birth. Are we serious? Brothers and sisters, don't wonder why you find these people in this Kemetic thing always trying to sit there and create rooms on Facebook to try to sit there and diss the Israelites. Because we stand against those kind of acts, brothers and sisters. And what that fool does prove is what it says in Leviticus 18. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, ye shall not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, where I bring you, shall ye not do. For the men of the land have done these things. This is how you have ancient Egyptian art, brothers and sisters, with a man shown erect. That is why in the walls of Karnak, they have Hatshepsut, who was the queen of Egypt, shown running after men, M-I-N, the Egyptian for so-called fertility god with an erect penis. Meanwhile, Hatshepsut is the wife of Thutmose II. Inside of the walls of Karnak, brothers and sisters, Hatshepsut, a queen of Egypt, is shown running after an erect penis that was not of her husband. So when we say, brothers and sisters, that the Most High put a distinction between the Egyptians and Israel in Exodus chapter 11, we know what we're saying and why we say it. Brothers and sisters, that's a book that you can get on Amazon. Uplifting the spiritual self-esteem of people who spread diseases. People who rip capillaries. People who promote cancer. Because lesbianism leads to cancer. Homosexuality with men leads to syphilis. There's nothing clean in that, brothers and sisters. And recently, that whole transgender thing has been leading to people getting killed because you a man posing as a woman and a person who you like, supposedly, and who grew to like you, found out that you was not a female from birth. Brothers and sisters, let's go on. Judah, no homo. The men of Israel do not do homo. So we can begin to understand what we're talking about. Asa of Judah, noted for getting rid of Sodomites. Jehoshaphat, noted for getting rid of Sodomites. Josiah, noted for getting rid of Sodomites. So periodically, you would have had Israelites that was emerging from the down low or wherever in the world. It says, and the Sodomites were in the land in those days. And there was a king that came up, slay them, brothers and sisters, because that is not natural. Now, let's go on, if you will, to the next part to sit there and see what happened when somebody spoke about it in America and so forth. Matter of Buju, meaning Buju Banton, the reggae artist. Buju Banton has released an official statement to address his controversial song, Boom Bye Bye. In recent days, there has been a great deal of press coverage about the song Boom Bye Bye from my past, which I long ago stopped performing and removed from any platform that I control or have influence over. The Grammy winning reggae singer said, I recognize that the song has caused much pain to listeners, as well as to my fans, my family, and myself. After all, the adversity we've been through, I am determined to put this song in the past and continue moving forward as an artist and as a man. I affirm, this is Buju Banton speaking of what happened. I affirm once and for all that everyone has the right to live as they so choose. Banton continues. In the words of the great Dennis Brown ain't support homo. I don't know what Buju's talking about. Dennis Brown sung about the children of Israel. He was a reggae artist that spoke about Israel. Dennis Brown ain't support man and woman and woman. But let's go on and see what they actually had Buju Banton saying. It goes on to say, in the words of the great Dennis Brown, love and hate can never be friends. I welcome everyone to my shows in a spirit of peace and love. Please come join me in that same spirit. Matter of Buju Part 2. Boom Bye Bye has been causing controversy since it was released in 1992, recorded by a then teenage Banton in 1988. The track denounces homosexuals and delineates violence towards them. The backlash Banton received from the track was almost enough to silence his career as the gay, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender LGBT rights groups lobbied for his ban at several concerts. Last year, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community, the women who sleep with women, the men who sleep with men, the people who sleep with anyone, and the people who like to deceive people about their birth community in Barbados reportedly called on Buju Banton to publicly denounce the single ahead of his performance in the country. Buju Banton has not performed the track since 2007, when he signed the Reggae Compassionate Act. The act was drafted in 2007 as part of the Stop Murder Music campaign, a human rights group coalition which advocates for lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and trans-identified persons. So what happened, brothers and sisters, and I know that the artist didn't mean it literally, but when the reggae artist Cuddy Ranks was talking about murder them, my accent is sloppy, I know. But the point I'm saying, when Cuddy Ranks was talking about murder them, and the other one talking about cut them limb by limb, and so forth and so on. When Super Cat was talking about ghetto red hot, Blussa and so forth and so on. When all of those reggae artists was talking about those kind of things, brothers and sisters, how come nobody was trying to stop them? Because they would rather sit there and talk about murder of heterosexuals than the slaying of homosexuals. That's why. These are the kind of things that we want to sit there and point out and to show the correlation between their wickedness and how they have taken crafty converse against the house of Israel. Let us explain the matter. Margaret Sanger, 1879 to 1966. Planned Parenthood, founded in 1916. American Birth Control League, founded in 1921. International Planned Parenthood Federation, founded in 1952. So let's go on to see how these organizations are more in cahoots than people may have thought. International Planned Parenthood Federation, in part, identifies and prevents, as it says here, gender-based violence. Gender violence, gender-based violence, when they who are connected to normative understandings of their gender. Hetero normativity, which is a word they made up. When heterosexuality is thought of as the norm of sexual orientation. Now, I want to emphasize heterosexuality is what is understood and correctly called straight, man and woman. Now, according to the International Planned Parenthood Federation, this kind of thinking, such as heterosexuality being the norm, is considered a homophobic thought. So these are the kind of terms that they done sat there and thrown around. And we already shown, brothers and sisters, how somebody up out the Kemetic community done sat there and wrote a book talking about they want to lift the esteem of such people. Are we serious? Next slide. Egypt culture spread. The cult of Isis was spread, the cult of Isis was spread from Egypt throughout the Roman world, even as far as the shores of Britain. The cult of Isis was spread from Egypt as far as the shores of Britain. Its impact was significant and long lasting. We know that America is the offshoot of Britain, right? So if we can see that the cult of Isis from Egypt went to the shores of Britain and that America is an offshoot, brothers and sisters, of Britain, let's see. As known, there is a reason why they favored the pyramids of Egypt and wanted to rule from there. Because remember, when they were supposed to go in the year 2000 to what they call the Pyramid of Giza and usher in what they call the New World Order, but it didn't go down like that. Now, why did I go here and speak about what? Pyramids of Ethiopia. Brothers and sisters, ancient Ethiopia had pyramids, still does. So why is it that they sweat or give so much credit to Egypt when there's other places in the world, such as Ethiopia, that also have pyramids? And of course, somebody's going to say, oh, the ones in Egypt are bigger. Oh, whatever. Next. Pyramids in Mexico. As we see here, this, brothers and sisters, is similar if you were to look at some of the ziggurats from ancient Sumer. Now let's talk about this gentleman right here. And we're going to end this presentation soon and make it into a part 2 for time and edification purposes. Right? The pyramids in Mexico. This right here is from the Olmec, brothers and sisters. In colleges, they try to sit there and say that that's the face of a baby. Brothers and sisters, that's not a baby's face. And as we can tell and see from its features, it appears to be a person, as you will call, black, or some might say African descent and Negroid features and so forth and so on. Let's go on to the next slide, brothers and sisters. Matter regarding the Olmecs and bywords. Olmec matter said to be from around 1200 to 400 BCE. This ties in because when we look at the dates from when the Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, and Israelites were in affairs, we see what was going on in the Western Hemisphere. Just as the Egyptians called the Asiatics Amu, just as the Sumerians called the Ethiopians Magan, just as the Americans called the Israelites Negroes, we want to point out that the Olmecs were called that by the Aztecs. All right? The people that are called the Olmecs did not call themselves that. That is the word that they was called by the Aztecs. And the Aztec civilization came after the Olmecs. Brothers and sisters, giving honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. Stay tuned for part 2 of this presentation, in which we will continue from this slide and go into where we are going to get into. Thus ends the first part of this presentation. For time purposes, thank you all for joining in. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. For those who did, brothers and sisters, please, if you care to, share the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And brothers and sisters, leave your comments, if you will, inside the comment board when this video is uploaded. Shalom Lachem. There will be a part 2. Shalom.